So hi everyone, my name is Julie Huang and I am a scientist at a company in the South San Francisco area called Alector. I actually just started this job about 2.5 months ago, and I'll tell you a little bit about how I came to have this position. But before getting into my current position, I'd like to share a little bit about myself. I actually grew up in Los Angeles and am a first generation college student. So my parents, they both immigrated from China. They both grew up in a pretty rural village in southern China, didn't have a chance to go to college, and came over to the US. And really through a lot of hard work and commitment, they were able to raise my brother and myself in LA, and really nurtured us and encouraged us to really pursue higher education. But you know, growing up as first generation, it was on some hand, on one hand, it was quite challenging because there wasn't really a lot of information from my parents about how to pursue college. But on the other hand, it was a really great experience being able to learn how to be resourceful, reaching out for help. And I really do look back on my experience as being a first generation college student really as a strength and an asset, more than being a disadvantage. And so I, from early on, really had this huge desire to go into science. I always had questions about the world and how things worked. And so I knew I wanted to be a scientist. And because of that, I had decided to apply for a lot of science-oriented schools. I ended up going to the California Institute of Technology down in Pasadena, which was only about 10 or 20 minutes away from where I grew up. And I ended up getting some really great research experience there, but it was interesting because I actually didn't end up starting out in biology, which is where I'm in now. I originally thought I was going to pursue a career in astrophysics, and I really loved astronomy and thought that that was going to be where I would end up, go to college, get a PhD, and then go on and work for NASA. So that was my goal, and all my personal statements were written in that way. And then during my time at Caltech, I did an internship at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and this is the NASA center that creates a lot of the robots and the rovers that head up into Mars. And during that internship, I learned that the day-to-day work of an astrophysicist was not exactly what I had imagined, and perhaps it was a little bit more glamorous in my head than what it really was. And while I was still really excited about the questions that they were pursuing in the field, I thought that for me, maybe I should think about other areas where I would be able to work on something that would be closer to home. And so I started exploring different options, and I ended up meeting some professors in the biology department and also in the geobiology department. So this was a really cool area of how biology intersects with earth science. And in the end, I ended up majoring in this geobiology studies, and I also did some research in a lab that looked at the role of different microorganisms, bacteria in particular, and how they interact with the human host. And these weren't just the bad bacteria that we always think about, the ones that cause disease. These are the ones that live inside of our bodies since we were almost from the time that we were born. And in fact, they provide a lot of really great beneficial functions for us to help us stay healthy. And so it really changed my view on biology, and in particular about bacteria, which up until then, like a lot of people, I always thought of them as being really dangerous things that you don't want to interact with. And so that really, that research experience really changed my view on biology, and in particular microbiology. And that's what really got me into the whole world of microbiology. And that research experience in this particular lab, studying these beneficial microbes, really got me hooked into this world of microbiology and beneficial bacteria. So that internship was really critical for me because it helped me realize that while up until then, I really thought astronomy was where I wanted to go. It got me thinking about other fields. And as I started exploring and talking to professors, and then later on getting research experience, that gave me the chance to really identify an area that I was very passionate about. And this, again, was not an area that I ever thought about while I was in high school. So that led me to applying for a PhD after grad school, after undergrad, because to become a scientist, I knew that I needed more training than just the research experience I had while at Caltech. And so I applied for a lot of different graduate programs in microbiology and ended up choosing Stanford University to pursue this degree, my PhD in microbiology. But actually, before I ended up going to Stanford for grad school, my undergraduate advisor, who I was working in his lab to study those beneficial microbes, he had encouraged me to apply for a fellowship to be able to go abroad and do research, to be able to get that experience of what was it like to do science outside of the US. And so with this encouragement and the encouragement of other professors who were my great mentors at Caltech, I applied for a Fulbright fellowship, which gave me the opportunity to go to Germany to do research. So the Fulbright fellowship is one of several types of fellowships that undergrads can apply for. And it's amazing because this is a fellowship where you are given funds to go and live abroad and be able to do research or do other things such as teaching English in these different countries. So I'd chosen Germany because I'd always had a fascination with the German culture, the music. I studied classical music when I was younger. And then also I knew they had a huge emphasis on science and technology. And so I was able to get a professor in Germany to host my year abroad. And I worked in her lab where it was kind of a really different area. I was studying microbes that reside in these deep sea organisms, these deep sea mussels and tube worms. So deep in the mid-Atlantic ridge. And it was a totally different area, but really the core kind of part of the science that really intrigued me was, again, understanding how do microorganisms living in another larger organism, in this case, not the human body, but the deep sea mussels and tube worms, how do these bacteria allow these organisms to survive in these very harsh environments? So I really had a fantastic time abroad in Germany, and I really encourage all of you when it's time to think about opportunities to go abroad, to look at these different types of opportunities, such as these fellowships, to be able to really see a totally different way of living, a different way of studying, a different way of doing research. It really opened up my eyes to beyond, what I was exposed to growing up in LA. And it was a great opportunity for me not only to see the world myself, but it also allowed me to provide my parents who, never really learned English well enough to be incredibly independent, and they would have never been able to go to Europe on their own to travel. But because I was over there, I was able to provide them this opportunity to go and study and go and see what I was doing while I was studying in this German university. And so I like to think that a lot of these opportunities I was able to have later on gave my parents also some of the opportunities they never got to experience in seeing the world in different places. So after this year abroad, I came back to the United States and I started my graduate program at Stanford, and that was really a fantastic program. I got amazing training. And then towards the end of my PhD, which was really focused again on understanding how bacteria living in the human body allow us to stay healthy, I ended up realizing that I might be interested in doing research in the biotechnology industry. And in the Bay Area, this is a huge industry that is very much thriving. There are so many different biotech companies and pharma companies in this very small area. And so I started interviewing people, doing what I call informational interviews to learn about what the various job opportunities are in the biotech industry, and to see if there was a way for me to actually get experience to learn what is it like to do research in the biotech world instead of the academic world, you know, where I was up until then. And so through meeting different people and acquiring information through my conversations with people, I was able to find another internship, this time in a biotech company, Genentech. And towards the end of my PhD, my last summer, I did this 12-week internship at this company, Genentech, to really see, will I like doing research in the biotech world? Because I wanted to make sure that I would get some experience and understand what it would be like before jumping in. And that internship really, again, was very informative, just like the internship I had done earlier in college at JPL, in that it made me realize that what I was actually really kind of lacking in some ways in terms of scientific training in order to pursue my interest in looking at how microbes interact with the human body to promote health, was that I hadn't done any research or had much training in understanding the immune system. So the human immune system is what interacts with the bacteria and the viruses that come into the body. The role of the immune system is to keep our bodies safe and to prevent the dangerous microbes from taking over and causing disease. The immune system is also important in maintaining this tolerance towards the bacteria that don't cause disease, but are nonetheless foreign to us in our bodies. And so there's this really intricate communication between the immune system and the bacteria and the viruses that live inside our bodies. And I realized that in order to really understand that relationship between the microorganisms and our human bodies, I needed to understand the immune system. So that internship motivated me to pursue a postdoctoral training in a lab where I can learn this whole new field of immunology, which I had no prior experience in while as a graduate student. And so I ended up going to a company called Amgen, where they also had a postdoctoral program to be able to allow for this additional training. And so I spent almost 3 years at Amgen as a postdoctoral fellow. And that was, I have to say, one of the most challenging times of my kind of my scientific trajectory and career, because all of a sudden I went from being an expert in microbiology to going into this world of immunology where I had no experience at all. I didn't have any formal training. I really didn't do any work with immune cells in the lab. And so those first few months at Amgen were really, really challenging. And there were moments where I remember wondering, did I make too big of a leap into a different area? Am I really going to be able to learn all of this and get up to speed and be able to feel confident in this field? I remember having those doubts, but sure enough, over the course of some really tough 4 months where I was learning a lot from colleagues who were just incredibly kind and patient as they were trying to teach me a lot in the lab, I finally felt at the end of the 6 months after starting at Amgen, I finally felt independent. And that was such a great feeling to have, because again, I really hadn't pushed myself so far up until then, and had really wondered whether I would be able to make it over into a place where I would feel really good and confident about doing that type of research. And so I'm glad I stuck it out, and I'm glad that, I really got myself into an environment where I had wonderful colleagues and mentors to train me. And because of that experience at Amgen, I had a very unique kind of background looking at microbes and the immune system, which allowed me to get my job, the next job, at a company called Caribou Biosciences. This was a company that had just started a team trying to look at how we can engineer microorganisms like bacteria to interact with the immune system. And so my background in microbiology and immunology made me a good fit for leading those types of projects. And I have to say, going to Caribou was basically a little bit of that test of my training. You know, it was going to be me working in a very small startup company and a small team. So that was quite different from Amgen, which is a big biotech company. It was a good test of how much I had learned while at Amgen as a postdoc. And I was really happy to see that, you know, even though, again, it was a daunting task to go into a small company and all of a sudden be the expert, I had the chance to really demonstrate that I learned a lot while I was at Amgen and was able to really develop these really fun projects with the team at Caribou. And that helped me really build a lot of confidence in myself as being an independent scientist. And so Caribou was a really phenomenal experience where I got to do some very fun and creative science with a cool, dedicated team of scientists interested in the role of the microbes in the body and how we can use them as treatments and medicines for different types of diseases. I had always wanted to be able to see how research can translate to actually the patients that would end up, you know, getting these new therapies that were being developed at the companies. And so that led me to think about, again, transitioning a little bit in my career from what we would call discovery research, where you're doing a lot of the fundamental biology research to understand new ways of developing drugs and new potential drugs, to really seeing how do we take a drug, an experimental drug, and see how we can actually help patients in the clinic. And so I started looking for opportunities in what's called translational sciences, where we're translating the discovery research into the clinic where the patients are. And so I started, again, as I do often when I'm trying to learn about a new field, I started doing informational interviews with people that had jobs in the translational sciences to understand what kind of roles can I consider to try to get this type of experience. And so through these informational interviews, I learned about translational sciences and a field called biomarkers, which really is important in trying to see if a particular drug is actually working in patients. And so that led me to my current role at Alector, where I'm actually a biomarker scientist. And in this role, I've been learning a ton about what's called clinical development, which means all the things that needs to be done in order to get the actual drug that has been developed in research to the clinic, where we can test it in the patients that have the disease that we would like to treat. And so I've been, it's been a really fun 2.5 months, a lot to ramp up on. So again, a really great challenge in a lot of ways for me to get into a whole new area. But at the same time, because of my prior experiences, I felt that I would be okay making such a big change, because I had felt like I'd done the same type of large changes in my area of expertise when I went from my graduate studies in microbiology into immunology. So now I'm going from discovery research into the translational sciences and into the world of clinical sciences. And it's been really rewarding to see now being able to work on looking at data that comes back from the clinical trials and seeing, is our drug working? Which patients are benefiting most from the drug? And it's been a great role for me to really work with a lot of different people. No longer am I in a small team trying to discover new ways of developing new medicines as I was at Caribou. But now I'm interfacing with just a variety of different members of the Alector team, and also people beyond Alector who are helping us maintain and manage these clinical trials. And that's been a really important learning for me as I kind of bridge into the clinical sciences, how to interact and engage with a variety of different people. So now I'm focused on trying to help the clinical teams understand what types of signatures or biomarkers, we call them, can indicate to us that a drug is actually working in the patients. And so it's a new puzzle for me to look into, but I've been having a lot of fun and learning a ton in the last few months. And so I hope that my story of how I've started out, wanting to be in astronomy and then going into biology and in particular microbiology, and then transitioning from academia to industry, and now from discovery research and industry to translational sciences. I hope this story helps you see that you don't need to know what you're going to be doing in 10 years, 15 years. You just have to try to see what you're most interested in at the moment, and also try to find as much information as possible. And so my best piece of advice for you who are in middle school or in high school is to really seek out those who could be great mentors. I had some amazing teachers while I was in middle school and high school who helped me find out more about different types of careers. And that was really important because that helped guide me at least towards what I was interested in at the time. And again, at the time it was astronomy. And that helped me decide which colleges to go to. And then once I was in college, I continued to have professors as mentors, but then also started learning to just meet and chat with people about what they did in their careers. And these are what I later learned in grad school were called informational interviews. I didn't even know that there was a name for this type of chat with people, but people are generally just really happy to share with you what they've gone through in their career trajectories. And so I really encourage you to reach out to people that your parents may know, your friends may know, and your teachers. All these different people in your life, they may know someone who is doing the type of job that you're interested in. And it's really fun to meet with them and ask them, so what is your job like? What do you do on a day-to-day? How did you get there? And that's been really helpful for me. Even now, I'm in my 30s and I'm still always learning because I want to keep my career kind of evolving as my interests and passions also evolve. And so I really encourage you to reach out to people for these types of informational interviews because it's incredibly helpful to get that information. And that'll help you decide, okay, this is something it sounds like would be interesting and I can pursue. Or just as important, if someone tells you something that you feel like, oh, I don't think I might enjoy doing that, which happened to me when I interviewed the astrophysicist and realized, I'm not sure if I really want to be doing that. That's just as important because, eliminating the things you don't want to be doing helps you figure out what you do want to do. And so, I think for you, even though you are early on, it's a really great time to just start looking for these different ways to chat with people, and the mentors that you develop will be really also instrumental in helping you either provide you with the information or connect you to people who have the information. And so with that, I really thank you for taking the time to hear my story, and I wish you all the best as you pursue your studies and start thinking about getting into college and thinking about the types of studies that you would like to pursue. So thank you and good luck.